Welcome to Leaders and Learners. My name is Tanya McKenzie, and you can find me at the intersection of public relations and leadership. Join us as we talk to organizational leaders, elected officials, experts, authors, artists, and personalities, sharing their stories, talking about how they got to where they are and how they continue to learn and lead the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. Greetings, good people. How you doing out there? Thank you for joining us for another episode of Leaders and Learners, where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. I hope you're ready to learn a little something today about one of my favorite subjects, curiosity. Y'all know I ask 1,000 questions. I love to learn, and you can't learn unless you're being inquisitive or, as we will talk about today, curious. So we have someone that has built a whole career on curiosity in the workplace. It's incredibly important as humans in order for us to elevate and grow and make amazing things happen, that we are curious about the world that we are in. We are curious about the people that are around us. We are curious about how we do things better, how we eliminate errors and mistakes, how we bring each other together. There is a level of curiosity that is incredibly healthy for each and every one of us in our personal lives and our business lives. So today I'm going to bring to you Mr. Stefaan van Hooydonk, and he's coming to you from Belgium, and it's late where he's at. So I want to make sure that you guys are tuned in, you're listening in, and you connect with him after this. And I think this conversation will help you. So let's go ahead and bring him on. Hello, sir. How are you?
Thanks, Tonya. This is good. You started really nice. I'm really looking forward to this discussion.
Oh my God. This international conversation. Yes, I'm incredibly excited about it because, well, I'm curious. I'm curious about you and how you got to this point. So introduce yourself to the people and how you wound up writing this book. Because one thing I do know is that
Mm,
being an author is not an easy thing either. So walk us through your journey a little bit.
thank you. Beautiful question. I married, still to the same partner as way back. Four kids. Probably my career is divided over three elements, so three paths. First path was I was working in investment consulting in the Far East, Hong Kong and China, helping foreign companies to set up shop. And then I moved into learning and development. First, I set up a business school in Shanghai, and then I moved to the corporate side, to companies like Nokia, to companies like Philips, companies like Saudi Aramco, Flipkart in India, Cognizant in the US, to really be in charge of learning and development. And about 3 years ago, I set up a Global Curiosity Institute because I felt I had been doing quite some work with curiosity already, and I realized there was very little research done on this matter, curiosity in the workplace. And I want to do more, and I wanted to work with leaders around the world and companies and inspire them and measure curiosity levels and baselining it, and also get curiosity out of the fluffy atmosphere into something that we can measure and something that's beneficial for leaders, for organizations, for individuals. As you rightly said, Tonya, curiosity is a is a game that you could play both at home and at work, and that's beautiful.
So, talk to me about the book and
Mm.
why you decided to put so much of what you've already been teaching, been talking about, been expressing in a book. And was your journey to becoming an author, was it difficult?
Well, writing a book is a beautiful exercise to put everything that you know, everything that you think about, everything that you research into a really a really condensed piece of work. And boy, it was not easy to write a book. I think I started three times and I'd written something like 150 pages, and then suddenly I put them in the drawer. And because I didn't know how to put your book on Amazon, or I didn't know how to design a cover, and I didn't know how to, and also a bit fearful. Is this good enough? Is this good enough for publishing? And I met a professor in at Georgetown, Eric Custer, And he basically coached me and took me by the hand, and he said to me how to write a book, and he helped me find some editors, and here we are. And it's a beautiful introduction, I think, to curiosity. And many leaders and CEOs, they kind of read the book and then they come to me and say, "Hell, well, this is great. Can you talk us a little bit more about all the research you're doing?" And I encourage everybody to do it. There's an amazing statistic that Eric Custer gave me. He said about of all the people that start writing a book, only 2% finish one.
Yes.
So it is hard work, and it takes a lot of dedication, and it takes a lot of dinners almost alone or away from friends, or saying no to some things. For a full year I kind of was dedicated on writing this book.
So to your point, I almost think there's a high level of curiosity about becoming an author that got you to this point. Like when you get stuck, at some point were you curious to know what it would be like to have this completed, right?
Mm,
The level of curiosity that actually drove you, and not just with this book, but I'm sure other things in life, to completing them because you wanted to know what that end result would look like and what it would result from. Yeah.
absolutely. I make the distinction between productive and non-productive curiosity. And
Mm.
productive curiosity starts with a very clear question, and also uses focus and discipline in the pursuit of finding an answer to that question. And with the book, absolutely, it was exactly the same. I wanted to finish this because I had this focus, and I couldn't look myself in the mirror, not finishing this almost. No, there was also a little bit of fear of failure in the process.
So just as curious as you are, and I say it because for those of you that are listening, understand that your curiosity can drive you. It doesn't
Mm,
necessarily have to get you in trouble because it can do that too. But
mm,
your curiosity should drive you. Also, being curious what not finishing, like you said,
mm.
looks like. How am I going to feel about myself? How am I going to feel about my ability to be able to get things done if I don't do this? What
Yeah,
happens? What does it look like knowing that I had this challenge in front of me and I folded?
absolutely. I think you're onto something, Tonya. The It's much harder not to do it.
Mm.
It's much harder for instance, to stay an entire weekend watching Netflix. That's easy, but it's harder to put on your shoes and to go hiking for a weekend type, because it takes energy. But guess what? At the end of the weekend, who is going to be more recharged? Whose batteries are going to be more recharged? It's typically the person who stuck out his or her neck and went hiking and did something a little bit crazy, or did something that took energy. And I find it amazing that, and also maybe referring to my book, somehow sticking out your neck and doing something that's hard often gives you much more pleasure in the end than looking for the easy way.
Yep, I 100% agree. So you're in Belgium, you've done a lot of work globally. Talk to me about curiosity throughout the world. How does it differ?
Mm,
Where is it the same? Like when you talk about curiosity, where is it embraced? Where are some of the places that it's actually rejected?
it's a very good question. Now let's step back for a second. What do we mean by curiosity? For me, curiosity is a mindset to challenge the mindset to challenge the status quo, discover, explore, and learn. And
Mindset that challenges status quo.
yes, and then leads to discovery, learning, and this and exploration. Now, it has three very distinct elements: a curiosity about the world, which we typically understand for curiosity, is intellectual curiosity, like an Einstein discovering the universe, or us being interested in reading a book, or a child being interested in whatever catches his or her eye, or so. Now, and that's a very important part of curiosity, intellectual curiosity. There's two other elements. One is what I call interpersonal curiosity, are interested in the other, the people we live with, the people that we work with. Um, Often we're more we're when in the beginning of things, in the beginning of a relationship, when the beginning working with a new colleague, but also at home, we're often more curious. And then 20 years later, with the often with our partners, we become less curious. We take the other person for granted. So it's a very important muscle to constantly practice, and to hone this muscle to be constantly in an exploration mode with the people that we live with and work with. We can talk about more about in a second if you want. And the third dimension, really important, I think, for curiosity, is curiosity myself.
Mm.
Who am I when I'm really watching in a mirror authentically, or who do I what are my superpowers? What are my beliefs? What are my narratives? What are my also biases and limiting beliefs? And who am I really when all these veils drop suddenly? So those three dimensions. And back to your point, absolutely, there's huge differences. If we're looking at the extremes, countries where there's very high political or religious influence tend to be less curious. Because in those societies, we don't want, or the kind of the leaders don't want people to be too curious, because curious people are thought to be unruly, are thought to be deviant, are thought to be difficult to manage, etc. So in the extreme, let's think about North Korea and compare North Korea with the United States, and suddenly we already immediately get a sense which of those countries is more or less curious. Now that doesn't mean that everybody in North America is curious, because there's many barriers, if I could say, to curiosity. Stress is a really big barrier. If we're too stressed, we're not going to be interested in trying out new stuff or to change things while they're working on. We're just going to bog down and do the things that we need to do, and not ask any questions about it. So it's a bit of a or flight mode that we're in. Um, and there's also a lot of external and internal barriers that we're creating. Managers, for
Mm.
instance, can be kind of uplifting people tremendously and make them curious, but can also stifle curiosity. Companies, before we went live, we were talking a little bit about startups versus grown-up companies. Grown-up companies are about 4 times less ready to learn from mistakes when compared to startup companies. So, and we have many grown-up companies in North America. We also have many startup companies in North America. So it depends on what these companies are structuring themselves as, or how leaders are positioning themselves
But does
in
it
their
matter
workplace.
if the company is creatively based or something more substantial? You know, there are startup companies that have a lot more creative elements to it than something that is more structured, and that has a standard operating procedure that needs to take place in order for it to grow. So, where does curiosity come in at when you have a company that is less based on creativity and ideas, and more about A, B, and C to get to D?
Mm.
You know.
It's a beautiful question. Actually, also the non-creative startups are are much more geared towards exploration, much more geared towards curiosity, compared to often grown-up companies. Now, a startup company often has not fully figured out yet what their product is going to be, what their service is going to be, what their market is going to be, and that sheer fact allows those companies to try things out and to be curious about how do we get it right. And the challenge is the moment they think they get it right, do they continue learning as an organization, or do they settle for confidence? Or do they settle for efficiency and they say, now we've got it right. Now we're going to stop all new questions about new products, about new markets. We're just going to go with it. And I'm when we're looking at um, the time that companies are around now, listed companies, is nowadays the life cycle of a company is about 16 to 18 years. And I often think maybe we're ending up with kind of one trick pony type of companies, companies that do something right and they milk it until it's not right anymore.
Right.
But companies reinventing themselves and starting about new markets, new products is harder. There are companies that can still do that, and these are the beautiful companies, and these are the companies that I'm researching. Also means what I'm saying doesn't mean that every grown-up company is not curious.
Mm.
I know many companies that are really aware
But do they
of.
get curious because they're getting left behind based on their inability to be curious? Or are they getting curious trying to get ahead of the curve? Like what have you seen? Are companies, grown-up companies, getting more curious because they want to be ahead of the curve, or are they getting more curious because now they see that they're being left behind because they didn't have a level of curiosity in their organization?
I think both. You have some companies are reactive and then become curious nonetheless.
Mm.
Often the role of the CEO in the executive team is beautiful, is really important. How do they look at curiosity? How do they look at exploration? And let's not forget, it's not only about exploration. It's about combining both exploitation and exploration at the same
Mm.
time. We still have to deliver the same goods and services and the same products to our customers, and they're expecting high quality and high efficiency. But if we're only focusing on that high efficiency and on conformity, then in the last century you can do this. In the 20th century you can do this because things weren't really changing dramatically around us. Nowadays things are moving so quickly. If we're only focusing on what we're doing well right now, we're moving backward as we speak, because there's many new entrants, there's many kind of volatile situations in industries, there's many things that are happening, and leaders need to embrace this curiosity on top of conformity that they're having. Um, Now, there's a little challenge there. Conformity is a given.
Mm.
It's almost a God-given right that in the beginning we're curious about things, and then gradually we settle in this new reality. We in the beginning of a job, in the beginning of a company, in the beginning of a relationship, we typically are more curious, and then gradually we we stop asking questions, or we ask less questions, and we think this new reality is okay as it is. So
So
that
curiosity is the enemy of complacency.
absolutely, absolutely.
So I have
Um,
this question, and I guess if you want to use curiosity as a weapon, you can. Most of what I've read in your book, there is a positive spin on curiosity. Obviously, anything that can be used to benefit can also be used as a weapon. How do
mm.
we encourage curiosity without inviting rebellion?
Well, it's a great question. When I'm asking leaders, do you think that curiosity is a good thing for an organization as it links to innovation, as it links to people engagement? 90% of leaders say yes. So very high acceptance. When I'm asking them a follow-up question, how much are you inviting curiosity into your team? Only 50% of the managers say yes. It's a bit like theory and practice. In theory, I say it's a good thing. In practice, I'd rather have somebody else deal with it because I'm focused on efficiency. I'm focused on keeping the ship afloat, and I'm a little bit afraid as a manager if I let curiosity in, it might almost distract the team. I might not be able to manage the team anymore. And actually, that comes from a flawed view of many leaders that curiosity is unruly. Curiosity is difficult to manage. Curious people are um, are deviant, and somehow this thinking corresponds with connotations like curiosity killed the cat and those kind of negative connotations about curiosity, which interestingly, predate the 1950s. Because before the 1950s, curiosity was all about nosy kids poking their noses into things they were not supposed to, or gossiping, or looking through a keyhole. So there's a negative connotation, and still somehow in a number of companies, that old language is still a little bit around, as if curiosity is a bad thing. The While at the same time, when we're talking to leaders and we're saying, "Are you interested in recruiting curious people?" Nobody says no nowadays.
Hmm.
But
Does that have anything to do with the fact that creativity and curiosity are kind of buzzwords now, though?
yeah, that has to do with it. Absolutely. When you're looking at the job ads, there's a 90% growth in the use of the word curiosity in online job ads in the last 12 months only. So companies are waking up to the notion that it's curiosity sells, or at least curiosity invites new people, and not only youngsters, all demographics. When we did research around sustainability versus curiosity, sustainability only appeals to the younger generation
Yeah.
because they want to save the nature more than older generations. It's sad, but that seems to be the case. Curiosity appeals to everybody.
Let me ask you this, and I know a lot of the work that you do is in the workplace.
Mm,
So I'm going to ask you about this in the workplace, but also in their personal lives. When people are curious about culture, other cultures in the workplace, because depending on how big or small and or intimate an organization is, understanding other people's culture is important, and people want to understand, but they have a fear of asking. How do you suggest companies wrap their arms around culture and cultural differences in an organization? And how do you
mm,
suggest employees go about being curious about other cultures? Because, you start getting these words like, well, I don't want to be a part of D&I. And, it's not, I think D&I is starting to get a bad rap because at the end of the day, it was really about opening people up to differences in cultures so that they are more comfortable and the work environment can be a lot more productive when you're not in fear of the person sitting next to you or you're more comfortable with them or just know more. But it's
mm,
almost like being curious is now being weaponized, even
mm.
in education. So when people want to know more about other people's culture, how do you suggest they ask?
It's absolutely if you're looking at expatriates, those expatriates are really curious about meeting new people, finding out about other cultures, also understanding their own culture. Where do I come from, and why do I think the things I think, type of a thing, are much more successful than expatriates who are not so curious, who are sticking to their own environment. When you were speaking, Tonya, I was thinking about a quote by Abraham Lincoln, and he said, "I don't like that man. I need to get to know him better." Um, and I think it's a beautiful thing when we don't like somebody. We have two strategies. One strategy is we push away the person and blame the other person for not being likable. But Abraham Lincoln, he used a different strategy. He was aware that he didn't like that person, and he therefore was curious about himself. What is it? To, what is happening in me by not? And maybe if I learn that other person, I learn or have lunch with that person, or I meet that person, I can learn something about the person, and I can also learn something about myself. So I think awareness is so important. Um, and often I'm asking teams, like, who do you have lunch with every day? And what I found is that people often have lunch with the same type of group every day, every single day, because that's a bubble that I feel comfortable with, and that I have lunch with every day. And we talk about the things we talk about, and we seldom invite new people into this group. And then using that Abraham Lincoln's quote of just now, I don't like that person, I need to get to know him or her better. I'm suggesting, why don't we have lunch with people that are different from us in terms of religion, in terms of skin color, in terms of background, in terms of behavior, people maybe that we don't really seem to like in meetings, and maybe we can learn something. And on diversity and inclusion, curiosity. I'm working now with quite a number of companies who are using curiosity as the key force to drive diversity and inclusion, because at the end of the day, if we are curious about the others, all these walls break down. If you're not curious about the others, then these walls remain,
And get stronger.
and absolutely can get stronger, because I have an interest in such a system to stick to my guns and to stay having lunch, just to keep having lunch with the same group of people and not invite this new person. And it has nothing to do with skin, it has nothing to do with a religion, it has to do with everything.
Yeah.
um Make sense?
Absolutely. I want you to tell the people, because I think it's important they get to know a little bit more about how you go about doing your work. And if they want to invite you into their company or their organization to have some of these conversations and promote curiosity, I want you to talk about what are your three diagnostics?
Mm.
What
I'm
do they
doing, I'm doing quite a number of diagnostics. I'm trying to get curiosity out of the realm of the fluffy into something that we can measure. And I have diagnostics around how is curiosity influencing the individual. And when people do my diagnostic, I give them back scores on their curiosity of the world, curiosity of others, and curiosity of self, and also total score and other dimensions. So that's a really important mirror that I give back to people on what is my curiosity profile. And then also, I said before that curious people need curious organizations to thrive. I'm also doing a diagnostic. How much are organizations, through their culture, through their processes, through their climate, inviting curiosity in people? How much are they supporting curiosity? So that's, these diagnostics are really the bedrock of everything what I'm doing, and I use that to do research, and I build it into my keynotes, and I'm doing a lot of inspirational talks with companies. And then very often after those inspirational talks, companies say, "This is really cool, very inspirational. Can you help us to maybe do a workshop with our executive team or our board? Or can you work with us to make us more curious in our recruitment strategy or in innovation strategy?" And I work then with companies that way, getting things getting things better, because in the 21st century, for me, is a century of ideas.
Yeah.
The 20th century was a century of scale and scope. Let's compare Marriott and Airbnb for a second. Nothing wrong with both companies. It took Marriott about 90 years to get together 700,000 beds. Airbnb does it in 4.
Yeah.
It all starts with ideas. It doesn't mean that only new companies are going to survive. Look at the difference between Netflix and Disney Plus. Disney Plus has been overtaking already for quite a while Netflix. So old companies can overtake new companies, but it requires intentionality. It requires awareness. It requires dedication and kind of this productive curiosity we spoke about earlier.
I love that. Tell the people how to get in touch with you. Um, get you into their organization. Continue to follow your journey. I see you're on Instagram, on Twitter, not on Instagram, which I love. I'm a Twitter fanatic, so let them know how to get in touch with you.
LinkedIn would be an easy way. Twitter is an easy way to get in touch with me, or go to the site globalcuriosityinstitute.com, which we have here in front of us, and leave a message. I'm working a lot in the US. I work a lot in Asia. I work all around the world, really, because many companies need this curiosity and want to get better at it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I love this conversation with you. Could probably go on because I stay curious. I
Mm,
think it's important to grow. I think it's important for us to come together. And we can't
mm,
do that if we are afraid to ask the questions or explore our own curiosity.
mm.
So thank you
Lovely.
so much for being here.
Thanks, Tonya. Thanks for having me. Fun.
All right. Have a good one. All right, guys. So listen, if your organization seems a little stalled and stale, no offense, but some of y'all's organizations are a little doing the same stuff and a little boring. You're not growing. Get curious about what next steps could look like if your personal life is stalled or stale. Get curious. Don't be afraid to imagine what something else looks like, what next steps look like, what happiness looks like. Don't be afraid of that. Many times I think people are afraid to be curious because they know they might actually have to do some work to get through that thing that they've conjured up. But if you can imagine it, then you know it's a possibility. And I guess that might be where the fear comes from. But, I told you before, this is the year of um, fighting coward culture. We are not going to continue to be afraid of what something else, something new looks like. We're not going to be afraid of what hard work looks like. We're not going to be afraid of what those dreams and desires might bring us in the form of work and tasks. Nope, we're not. So I suggest you find a way to get in touch with my new friend here, uh, tap into some of his curiosity, and make sure that, you open up and imagine what something new looks like in your organization. Imagine what something new looks like in your own personal life. Do not be stale, all right? Because you're going to get left behind. Lifetime learners. That's what we are here. So thank you for tuning in for another episode of Leaders and Learners. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. All right. Make sure you like, share, follow, share this with someone that needs it because I know you got some stale folks in your life. I know. Hey, thanks for showing up to the podcast where we all know that the best leaders are lifetime learners. When you get a sec, take a moment, leave a comment. What you think about today's episode, and share it with someone that you know could use the gems that were dropped today. Follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss who's coming up next. You never know who could show up here and what they could say. For your professional needs, marketing, PR, communications, and leadership, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Sand and Shores, or hit us up at sandandshores.com. Again, thanks so much for showing up. We appreciate you, and we'll see you soon.